Okay.
Cory, thank you for inviting me back to discuss Alberta and the current tariff situation. If you recall, in our last conversation, we were talking about how one of the leaders in the auto industry was stating that Canadians should all pull together in order to fight these tariffs, and that we shouldn't allow ourselves to get picked off one industry, one region at a time. Subsequent to that conversation, Smith, Premier Smith, pops up and says that she's going to hold a referendum for Alberta separation. Now, there can be no doubt that there is a link between her announcing that basically on the same time that she knows the Prime Minister will be down in the U.S. visiting President Trump. So what is the message there? What is your opinion, Cory?
Well, her going to make these announcements at the time that Carney is visiting Trump, I mean, we have to look at Smith went down to kiss the ring of Trump before he was crowned, and she made some sort of promises or deals trying to get more oil to Texas. So with Carney going down there saying, hey, you know, Canada is a sovereign country, we're not for sale. Carney was saying that, you know, we're going to unite against you, while Trump's being told by Smith, look, we'll get all our oil to you for your support on putting pressure on Ottawa, is what I'm taking. And I think that's why Kevin O'Leary was down there with her kissing the ring, because he's been inside dealing with the Conservative government here with his little operation for an AI center up by Grand Prairie, which blindsided a few people in the Native Reserve up there. So we have, like you said, I really don't know what they said behind closed doors, but I'm sure there's not full disclosure to Albertans.
When you look at it from the perspective of the continuity of the country of Canada, and you look at it from the perspective of isolating the various economic engines, for example, Southern Ontario and Quebec have a fairly active auto industry, or at least have had to date. Currently, with the tariffs coming into effect, the layoffs have been drastic. The plants are shutting down. Stellantis has no plans to reopen the plant in Windsor, and that is effectively the only auto assembly plant left in Windsor. So the big three are leaving the country as per Trump's desire. Now, if Canada can't fight back on the auto industry, it needs to fight back on some other level, whether that be softwood lumber, agriculture, or oil. And our oil is selling at 1/3 discount to the world price. And our only customer currently is the United States. So Smith selling out to Trump takes away one of the cards Canada can play with respect to reciprocal tariffs against the U.S. I don't think the timing is an accident.
Well, the Alberta government spent $10 billion under Kenny to do that Keystone XL pipeline, and Biden stopped it. Trump wanted it. So Trump has ran on the premise that he was going to increase the amount of oil in the U.S., and one of the largest supplies of their oil that they sell internationally comes from Alberta. And at a discount, like you said, we're getting a huge discount compared to what Mexican and Venezuelan heavy oil gets. And they do a quick refining down in Texas and then sell it for Brent prices over in Europe or wherever they can in the world. They make a huge amount of profit. Now, business 101, you know, we got to use a little common sense that they're not telling people here in Canada and Alberta, is that if you more than double the supply of heavy oil to the refineries in Texas, the only reason you would do that is that Texas wants to have a supply that they're buying at a cheaper price, because oversupply means they're going to offer us 50 cents on the dollar or 20 cents on the dollar for that oil. Now, I remember when the NDP was in, the U.S. said, "Hey, we're not paying anything for the oil," and they kept shipping oil for a few months, and we didn't get anything from it. The deals that Smith can make with Trump under the table without disclosing to Albertans can be pretty devastating, because it's a non-renewable resource. Now, putting the brakes on it.
I think you're missing the point, though. Apparently, she said she had discussions about U.S.-Canada energy relationships and asked Trump if he would like to purchase additional Canadian oil. Now, first of all, she can't speak on behalf of Canada. And perhaps somebody pointed that out to her. However, if Alberta were an independent nation, or perhaps a state of the U.S., all of a sudden Smith would have the ability to make those types of discussions. And I think what's been pointed out to her is she has no authority to enter into energy discussions on a U.S.-Canada level, on a provincial level, perhaps. But here's what she's trying to do. I believe Trump would have promised her that if she can get a separation of some sort, he'll make her the first governor.
Yeah, that's probably been talked and discussed for sure.
He's probably promised her something.
I mean, and you got to look at it like Smith has been stirring this cauldron of wanting a fight with Ottawa over nothing. Ottawa built her a pipeline to coastal waters. When the Conservatives under Harper, we knew there was a shortage of pipelines. There was never one built. And Poilievre was part of Harper's government. He never did a damn thing for Alberta. With the Trans Mountain Pipeline, we command a little higher price, and the Americans don't set the price as low as they'd like to for the oil heading south. But if we go back to sending all our oil in a second pipeline down to the U.S. refineries, we're back to getting nothing of value, and all the easy oil is going to be gone, and we're not going to make any profit off it. So
that's not the issue that I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about the negotiations at a national level.
Yes, and she's trying to use the oil to start a war with Ottawa. Is my point. Is that
no? But she's undermining the negotiations intentionally. Now,
yes.
What I think what we need to do is try to determine, is she serious? Is she serious about an independent Alberta, or is she just merely grandstanding and trying to undermine the ongoing negotiations between Canada and the U.S.?
I believe it's more the latter, that she's trying to undermine negotiations with the U.S. to get her name on a larger scale in Canada. She wants to be the queen of negotiations for Canada and get all the media attention. I mean, she's a media hound like Trump. She has a radio talk show. She does as premier, did before premier, and it's the only venue where people will listen to her, because she selects who calls in, and I'm sure she would never take a call from a person like you or me, where we're going to check her credibility.
All that aside, it's speculation. Let's look at the evidence. The evidence, I believe, is that you you lengthen, you extend the time for people to get their petition together.
Yeah,
so instead of 90 days, you give them 120 days, and you lower the petition signatures from 20% to 10%. So if she really believes that there's this movement in Alberta for separation, why would she lower the bar and extend the time for signatures?
That's the evidence.
And in my opinion, she's actually playing with fire here. And I don't think she realizes the consequences of what she's attempting to do. And I say that because I don't think, well, it's a good thing they don't make rockets in Alberta. You know, I wouldn't, I wouldn't put her on my high school debating team. Like, you know, I don't think she's got that kind of capacity to even think these things through. Now, if you look at who's behind her, O'Leary, you know, I view him the same as Stephen Miller. I think he's the monster behind the throne. And then if you also look at who else that she's visiting Trump with, you'll see that it was Pollock and Anderson. And all of a sudden, the three of them show up in Florida together, and they do a group shot with O'Leary. Does she have his cell number and say, you know, hey, you know, or did they just meet in the coffee room of Marty and Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, it's not coincidence. It's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence.
I mean, you got to look at it like the barn door was opened up and the horses left the barn. Some of them were donkeys, and how are you going to get them back into the barn? Smith has literally opened up that barn door, and we have no way of dealing with the crap that's being shit all around the farmyard, just because she doesn't have an understanding of oil and gas and Alberta and what reality is. I mean, how many people voted for separation in the last election in Alberta or federally? What, wasn't the Republican Party running here in Alberta?
Yeah, I don't know, but the other thing that you have to look at is Smith is creating the Alberta Next panel. So first of all, you have to wonder who's going to be on this panel and what is going to be the jurisdiction of the panel. What is their authority? What kind of money are they going to spend? Are they going to be doing advertising? Now, she says it'll host a series of town halls to gather ideas and grievances. Okay.
Are they going to discuss that $170,000 rug for her office that she bought?
Yeah. Yeah, or the $10,000 first class tickets back from meeting with Trump, like, you know, or are they going to have somebody leading a discussion on the ways and means in which Smith can get whatever it is that she's looking for, right? So she stated that some of the more popular ideas discussed with the panel may be placed on the 2026 referendum ballot. So she's already suggesting that there'll be a referendum, even though no one has started the petition for the referendum.
Of course they're going to start it. I mean, she was lobbied to lower the standards so they could try to have a legitimate chance of getting 177,000 signatures in 120 days. I don't think they'd be able to do it. But
when does the Alberta Next panel start holding town halls? Immediately? And will they have a sign-up sheet at the front door so everybody who attends for the, you know, donut and the coffee gets to sign the petition? Like, what's the plan there? And one of the reasons why she's spooked is because one of the bargaining chips that Canada has is because the Alberta oil is being sold underpriced. By increasing the cost of the oil to world price, the I should say fair price.
Fair price, yes.
Smith is afraid that it'll affect the Alberta economy. So she's trying to take one of the bargaining chips away on the renegotiation of a free trade or trade deal or tariff deal. Like, she's trying to get in between the negotiations, and I think has no idea what she's doing. And I think she's being pushed by Rob Anderson and these other clowns that have agendas that.
Well, let's look at it. I mean, remember a premier named Stelmach. He came along and said, "Hey, you know, the U.S. You got to pay your fair share. Alaska pays X amount of royalty for their oil. Alberta would like to get the same as Alaska." and look what happened to him under pressure from the U.S. firms and backdoor politics. He was removed faster than you could bat your eye. I mean, that's that barn door open where the horses got out, and they're not going, the U.S. isn't going to let us put the horses back in the barn, and they're funding a lot of this politics in Alberta, and who knows what they promised Smith. I mean, maybe a lot of her money came from U.S. interests, because she's sure not spouting a strong and economic future for Alberta by giving away all our resources for peanuts. And that's been going on for a while in the conservative movement in Alberta. Is they, they did the federal government did a study on foreign influence, but not once did they ever come out in the media and say, hey, U.S. media, you guys are the part of the influence out here, especially in the West. So, I mean, it's dubious that most of our media is foreign owned, and the one CBC is afraid to say anything, because if the Conservatives ever get in power, they're put out of business, and that's been promised many times by Conservatives. Even Polvier said we're going to silence CBC because they go against our interest in news media. And I guess that's why you and I are here right now, is we feel that maybe we should have a voice on podcast style to try to bring real facts out. I mean, I'd like to see more people contact us and give us some of the information they have that we don't have available to us, and maybe we can make some real inroads into proper newscasting.
In any event, I think this ongoing story will become clarified maybe in 120 days.
You're an optimist.
And well, how's she going to get her town halls together? Who's going to organize them?
I have no idea.
Is she going to have paid organizers? I've never heard of such a thing anywhere in Canada where somebody, a premier announces that they're going to have town hall meetings for some third-party project.
Yeah.
Maybe I've just not thought of it as that American expression, town hall.
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
I mean, the people backing her, or her backing a group of people to push a petition out there, I mean, that's going to be government resources to get signatures on that petition. I can't see it any other way, that there isn't some sort of money going to get it done. And she's said she wants to see a referendum in 2026, so they're obviously backing and pushing it no matter what she says. You can't flop and flip like a fish on land. You'd made all the moves to make it happen, and then you're saying, oh no, I only made it available if it was to happen, but I'm going to do town halls to make it happen, but I'm not really doing town halls to make it happen. I just want Albertans to have a voice. That fish smells like rotten fish, and it's flopping every which way, but the wind's sure blowing that stink everywhere.
And the thing is, again, what she's doing is she's taking away the ability of Canadian negotiators to deal fairly and honestly with the Americans. In other words, she's taking the only positive card off the table. The Americans want our oil. We sell well over 99% of it seems like, to them currently.
Yeah.
They need it. Their refineries need it. The oil that they bring in from offshore isn't the right grade of oil that their refineries require. They need it. So why are they paying 1/3 less than they should be paid? And that difference is the negotiating card for Carney. Yeah. That he can say, okay, we're going to add an export tax on the oil, and it's going to be universal. It'll be on all Canada's oil clients.
And that would be a smart move. I mean, Federally, they
And-
get no revenue off it, and federally, it's an export of a commodity that is Canadian. Although Alberta may or Saskatchewan may own the oil rights, the minute it touches that border, it's actually a federal product, and I think the federal government should be putting a tax on, demanding fair price to prevent the corruption that's been going on in the West since the late 70s. And I think that's the only way that Carney can really deal with it, and Smith might be actually doing us a favor, because we as Canadians now see the corruption of the Alberta government, and maybe it's time that the federal government stepped in with that export tax on oil and said, hey, that's enough of this giving away the resources. And my calculations, we've lost trillions of dollars, and we'd have a really strong economy if we hadn't allowed that to happen just out of Alberta. That's my take.
Well, when you consider you've got the third largest reserves in the world, and your standard of living is far behind a lot of these other countries.
Yeah, they're cutting back on health care, they're cutting back on this, and that, when we should be the Saudi Arabia of North America. We should be, very well off and having real good standards of living. Instead, we're always whining and crying that there's no money in the budget. Well, I think that's a management problem. I mean, if they ran my company and sold oil the way they're selling oil, I'd fire every last one of them. They would never be allowed to operate in any fiscal responsible position within my company. They've demonstrated that they don't understand economics, and they're giving it away for unreasonable prices when it's a commodity in demand.
Now let's look at what could or could not happen. Maybe Carney should declare a national emergency with respect to the declining oil reserves and demand world price. And
Great idea. Great idea.
And as our only customer and as their number one supplier, are the Americans going to stop taking the oil?
Never.
And
they will never stop.
Yes. So Alberta's got nothing to worry about. Just because all of a sudden world price is being paid for, it's not going to affect the Alberta economy. Now, she's afraid that less oil will be sold to the Americans because it costs more. That's her concern.
Correct.
Now, my concern would be that the major pipelines in Canada dip down into the U.S. and the Americans can shut them off. And what would that do, essentially, for Canada's sovereignty? So perhaps we should declare a national emergency and build the infrastructure to make ourselves independent of sales to America on the one hand.
Ooh, that sounds like the National Energy Program that was vetoed by the U.S. interests a long time ago, but I'll let you go. I digress.
But in any event, if Carney mentioned that when he was campaigning in Alberta and forgot about it when he was campaigning in Quebec, but what they need to do is build a pipeline across the top of Canada to join both ends. Now, if people in Quebec want to buy foreign oil, they should pay for it. They shouldn't have it subsidized so that they can avoid paying the actual cost. And that's another issue that should be addressed.
And we both agree with that. We've talked that for 10 years, you and I, that this should be done. And nobody wants to see it come to fruition. But now Trump may have triggered the catalyst to make that happen. And Carney would be the guy to probably demand that, that it be built and build the infrastructure.
I'm surprised I haven't read anything with respect to Carney responding to Smith's overtures to Trump, and I think he's probably clever not to say anything, because he's probably basically telling Trump what Trump already knows, is she has no authority to negotiate anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So, hopefully she stayed in his hotel and blew a bunch of money and, had a meal on Alberta,
Well, I'm sure she did. I'm sure she spent lots.
Maybe she contributed. contributed to his campaign fund, or maybe O'Leary does. But you know, that man, Trump, does nothing unless there's something in it for him.
Exactly.
And even giving her an audience is something. So you wonder what she gave him. And
Cryptocurrency, O'Leary's right into cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency transactions are untraceable. And you can hide a lot of money in the coffers of the Alberta government in royalties and stuff to redirect towards Trump. So, I don't know. These conspiracy theorists love ideas like that. Well, why don't you do some number crunching and go look at the Alberta books?
Well, it should be interesting to hear what these town halls say, whether or not they'll be publicized, whether or not there will be rules and regulations, whether or not the other three political parties in the province will be invited to the town hall as well.
Well, I doubt that would ever happen.
Or whether it'll be chaired by a government cheerleader, you know, and they're taking signatures at the door for the petition.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to see how this rolls out.
You know, those town halls could be another Texas shuffle step coming. I mean, Texans love to shuffle around up here in Alberta in the country bars. I mean, maybe they're going to shuffle their way into the town halls. I have no idea.
It should be interesting.
Well,
Anyways,
that looks like a wrap, I think.
well, I haven't heard what Carney resolved yet, so that'll be another story to see if he discloses more than just the shaking of the hands and the smiling.
Well, I think Trump's a little leery of him because he's got all the banking connections, and you wouldn't want to, piss Carney off with his banking connections, because Trump always has to borrow money for something here or something there. At least paying lawsuits or whatever, he has to borrow money, so he's not going to really cause an frontal attack on Carney, because Carney's friends with all the guys he's got to go get money from after politics. So that's my take on it. I could be wrong, but
I think the reason he didn't like Trudeau is because the girls like Trudeau better than they like Trump.
yeah, exactly. I mean, let's compare, a donkey and a thoroughbred. Come on.
I guess he figures that Carney's no competition that way.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, we'll leave it at that before we get off on another sidetrack. Okay, thank you for this podcast.
Yeah, well, tune in, plug the like.
Yeah,
give us a
share,
comment.
subscribe, I guess we're supposed to say.
Yeah, we'll read your comments.
Yeah, and definitely comment. Yes, indeed. Okay, take care. Bye.
Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and please share the video. Don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too.